I wanted to share something that I thought was interesting about um, what I read in the Bible. I can't really just point to a single passage of Scripture so much as I can just in general in a book, mainly the Old Testament book of Judges. What I'm talking about is how the people of Israel kept coming back and then turning away from God. They would always come back when they had a judge, and then as soon as the judge died, they would turn away from God again. In fact, the scripture itself says that. The judge would be raised up and placed by God. The judge over Israel would speak to Israel and rebuke it for turning away from God. Israel would be sorry and lament and come back to God, and then God would deliver them from whoever was oppressing them, or whatever trouble they were in. Then, as Scripture clearly says, as soon as the judge died, they returned back unto their wicked ways, which was especially the worship of false idols is particularly mentioned, especially Beelzebub. And I find that really quite interesting because I kept thinking to myself, why does God mention this over and over again? Why did he put up with the Israelites when they constantly kept coming back and then turning away and then coming back again and then turning away again, like a yo-yo does when you're bouncing it up and down on a string? And then while I was sitting there thinking that to myself, it made me realize that really Israel in the book of Judges is actually a reflection of how we as Christians are so many times today. Because if you think about it, we do the exact same thing. We wind up turning away from God and going into some sort of sin, whether it's, say, sexuality, pornography, or greed, or hatred. And we just get so wrapped up into this particular sin or series of sins in our lives. And then, say, something happens, a judge raises up in our life, whether it's a moving sermon at church, or we read an article, like I say, a commentary that makes us feel guilty, or it's just the guilt of doing the sin itself. And so we promise ourselves, and we go to prayer, and we have this moment of redemption through prayer and begging forgiveness to God, saying, "We'll never do it again. We'll never do it again. We'll never do it again." Say lying, I promise I'll never do it again. And so while that feeling of guilt and that feeling is with us, we don't do it. But then as soon as that feeling dies off, we go right back to that sin. And we just quite often play this yo-yo trick. And I realize, that we do that as Christians. I've done that. I am probably, scratch that, I am one of the most guilty people out there when it comes to that sort of thing. I feel so guilty for something, and I swear I'll never do it again, I'll never do it again, and then the feeling wears off, and I wind up doing it again anyways. The fact of the matter is that the reason why that the Israelites turned away from God whenever their judge died is because while the judge was there to remind them of how evil and how wrong they were. But once that judge died, they didn't have I guess you could say, an outside influence to remind them. And the fact that they so quickly went back to their evil ways showed that although they felt a moment of guilt, they had not truly changed how they were in their hearts. They had not brought God deep into their innermost pits of their hearts and the nasty places of their soul, and allowed God to clean it out by true fellowship and following of Him, obeying His commands. And we as Christians do the same thing today. We allow ourselves to have feelings of sorrow and feelings of regret, but so often once those feelings wear off, we go back to our old sin because we haven't truly allowed God into those places and allowed him to clean it out to make it suitable for praising him, giving him glory, following him. And really, if we want to do as we claim and get away from these old sins and truly follow God, that's what we have to do. We have to get beyond the feeling of regret, beyond these feelings of sorrow and saying, God, I'm sorry. Now, those feelings and that regret can be a starting point. It can be a point where you realize what you've done wrong, and that's good. But in order for it to truly last, it does have to be a lifestyle. You have to say, God, I'm letting you into my heart. Please clean it out. Please make it for you every single day. Because if you just go like the Israelite did and just go by your judge, whether it be, like I said, regret or something you read, just feeling, once it dies, you'll go right back to it again and again. I hope I made myself clear, because frankly, I don't know how to put it in any other words than that. You have to let God into your heart every day and make a continual work at it, because otherwise it'll just be a yo-yo.